welcome to the Phoenix Rising podcast and welcome to this video. In this video, I am going to teach you several very effective ways that you can reduce anxiety and hopefully potentially stop panic attacks for good. And we're going to go over like a lot of the science behind it because like I've said, education is empowerment, and the more knowledge and understanding you have of what's going on with your body, the more aware you are and the more empowered you are to do what you need to do in order to make some changes. So we're going to dive a little bit into the science behind what even causes anxiety and panic attacks. Then I'm going to walk you through some mindfulness practices, but then also some vitamins, herbs, natural supplements you can take that can alleviate anxiety and panic attacks, if not at least reduce them significantly. So all this, by the way, is coming from personal experience. This isn't just theory and like reading a book or reading an article. I used to have issues with anxiety attacks for a long time. And if you've listened to this podcast or watched videos on YouTube with me for a while, you already know this. Like it all started back in my 19s, 19 and 20s. And it was super frustrating because nobody could figure out what was going on. Like blood work would come back fine. Everything was coming back like perfect health, but I would get these random, super crazy, intense anxiety and panic attacks out of nowhere. And it's really like brutal to your self-esteem. And it's also very stressful, especially if you don't know like when it's going to come on. If you want to know more about that story, I have it on the website about my about page and all that and all those things. But so the reason I learned so much about this was in an effort to help myself and then finding out that like, oh, a lot of people actually have this issue. Fortunately, now it's talked about a lot more. 10, 15 years ago, it was like an embarrassing thing. Nobody talked about it. They thought like something was wrong with you if you had anxiety and a panic attack. And now this is like one of the most common things. It's something crazy, like 76%. I think of Americans have this, and most people don't talk about it. They just go on medication and like keep it under the radar. So hopefully this video will give you a little bit of relief in that it's very common and there's nothing wrong with you about it, especially once you understand the science behind it and what's happening to your brain and your body. You will see that it's really just your body's defense and survival mechanism and how it's trying to help you. So I'm going to give you some tips on how you can alleviate that. All right, so the science behind panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and what's actually happening. And you can actually tell yourself this if you're experiencing that, and just like knowing this might help like alleviate it some. But pretty much your body ends up being flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. So you have a thought or a signal in your brain, signals to the rest of the body like fear, fight, or flight, and it pumps adrenaline and cortisol through your body. It does this because it's trying to protect you. So your pupils will dilate, your heart rate goes like through the roof, your body starts pumping out all the stored glycogen and sugar. So your blood sugar just goes off the charts into your bloodstream. And it's doing this to get you hyper focused. So like your pupils dilate, all this adrenaline and cortisol comes rushing through your bloodstream. Your heart rate goes up and all the stored glycogen, which remember, glycogen is what happens when we work out too, gets flushed through the bloodstream to give you energy in order to help you fight off whatever it is you need to fight off. So your body is doing everything it's supposed to do in response to helping you survive or helping you fight off something, because something in your brain is telling it, hey, there's a problem, or there's fear, or it's saying like, you got to get out of here. So without going too deep on the science part of that, basically you have a part of the brain called the amygdala. And this part of our brain helps us regulate our emotions, all of our emotions. And whenever these emotions are signaling like alert or problem or fear, it will send that alert to your hypothalamus saying, hey, we got a problem, there's trouble. The hypothalamus then ends up telling the central nervous system, hey, let the adrenals know we need it to pump out hormones of cortisol and adrenaline to survive. So you've listened to this, you've heard me talk about your adrenals and stress and all those things. So that's kind of the science that goes behind it. The amygdala regulates our emotions. The emotions that come through are fear, run, fight, flight, high stress, high alert, all of that. It then tells the hypothalamus, like, hey, high alert. Hypothalamus tells our adrenals. And then the physiological response is cortisol and adrenaline. So sometimes it's physiological, sometimes it's psychological. It's kind of the whole thing like what came first, the chicken or the egg, where sometimes we have thoughts, especially long term thoughts of fear, stress, worry, anxiety that sends these chemical responses into the body that create these experiences. And sometimes it's an actual physical thing. So something outside of yourself or something physiologically related that creates this response, which can be, I mean, you can be in a situation that you need to survive. This happens a lot with people who suffer with PTSD. Can happen if you're in an environment that doesn't feel safe. It can also happen though with things like nutrient deficiencies, unstable blood sugars, and even histamines, like the whole anaphylactic shock that happens if people have high allergies. It's a very similar response of what happens with the body in anxiety and panic attacks. So even high histamines have been related to this. But it's crazy. They have done a lot of research on this and they have found people who have come into the ER or the hospital with either anxiety attack or panic attack and they think they're dying or they think they're having a heart attack. They started running different tests to see like what is in common with all these people. And from a nutrient standpoint, one of the things that is in common is most people who have this issue also were deficient in things like B vitamins and iron. So there's a lot of things that can trigger this response. And hopefully, just knowing this can help ease or at least calm the anxiety that you're not dying, you're not losing your mind, something is not seriously wrong. And that's even like one of the strategies that you can do is if you feel this coming on, and everybody has a different response to this. So how do you know if it's an anxiety attack and a panic attack? Is you have physical symptoms like sweaty palms, hyperventilation, you feel like you can't breathe, your head is spinning. Like a lot of people will describe it as like they literally feel like they're losing their mind. Um, Sometimes like you feel dizzy, nauseous, lightheaded, uh, shaky, feel like you are like suffocating. Other people, it's all mental. Like it's just like pure mental response where their brain just feels like it's like spinning off the rails. So it's different for everybody. Some people have more mental responses. Some people it's more physiological. But most of the time, it like the end result, the overall theme is you either feel like you're losing your mind or you're going to lose your mind or you feel like you're dying and you can't breathe. That's what's happening for most people. So when this happens, one of the strategies that you can help take it from a 10 to a 2 is what we're talking about. Is just like having the knowledge and then you start doing self-talk. So if one of the things that can trigger it is the idea of fear, a threat, worry, or stress, when you're feeling all these things happen, you can be like, okay, I know that right now there's adrenaline running through my body. There's cortisol running through my body. My body is dilating and doing everything it can to try to help me, not hurt me. It's okay. Every time this happens, it's usually going to pass. All I got to do is just be aware that, like, just telling yourself these things of, like, I'm not dying. I understand what's happening. My body is pumping adrenaline and cortisol through my body to try to get me in a safe place. So all I have to do to bring it back down is remind it, like, hey, I'm okay. I'm safe. Everything is fine. And what happens is when you start having this calming self-talk, it actually reverses it. So then we have the amygdala that processes those emotions, sends it to the hypothalamus, then to the adrenals, then things start to slow down. Also, doing deep breath work through this will naturally help to stimulate the vagus nerve, which the vagus nerve is our calming nerve. So the self-talk, the vagus nerve, all of that helps bring it back down. So you just take a deep breath in, and you take a deep breath out, and you're like, it's okay. I know what's happening right now. My body's trying to protect me. For some reason, it feels under threat. All is well, brain. I'm okay. There's no need to panic. I'm safe. And you keep going through this. And when you keep going through this, like eventually your whole central nervous system will start to come down. All those neurons will stop hyperfiring and freaking out. And it'll start to re-regulate itself. So that's one of the things you can do immediately. I feel like the second like somebody explained to me what was even going on, I was like immediately relieved because I was like, oh, whew, okay, so this is normal. I'm not dying. I'm not losing my mind. I'm not going to end up in the psych ward because I'm having all these crazy spirally thoughts. Like it's just, this is the science behind it and what's happening. So, some psychological factors that can cause extreme anxiety attacks and panic attacks. Number one, unmanaged stress. Unmanaged stress will not only put your nervous system in a state of high alert, but it also causes a high amount of cortisol to be produced, which throws off your blood sugar, which can basically throw off your entire system. So, unmanaged stress, and how do you even manage stress is usually what people ask. You manage stress to the best of your ability by having habits in place to take care of that. So everybody always puts mindfulness on the back burner, but what you don't understand is it's like everything else. People put their health on the back burner until their health makes it impossible for them to not give it attention. So you can put mindfulness on the back burner until you start having anxiety and panic attacks and feel like you're going to lose your mind. And then you're forced to put it on the front burner. So you can either have this experience, take it as a lesson, and make the lifestyle adjustments, or you make the lifestyle adjustments, practice mindfulness and breath work and meditation, do better stress management and set boundaries, and just have overall better well-being in life. Like, I know you guys have heard me say this, our bodies don't just freak out for no reason. It usually is letting us know, constantly communicating to us when things are out of balance. So unmanaged stress, ways you can manage stress, meditation, breath work. I talked about breath work not that long ago, 5 to 10 minutes a day, just really calming the whole central nervous system down. And journaling is super great, getting all the stuff out of your brain and putting it down on paper so it's not constantly coursing through your thoughts. Manage the stress though. Another thing that can cause anxiety and panic attacks are things like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from something that has happened, which then also is connected with unresolved trauma. Unresolved trauma. So our subconscious mind is interesting because when we have experiences that were very traumatic, and that everybody always downplays their own emotional experiences, because I've talked to people before with like emotional trauma, either from like losing a pet or heartbreak when they were younger, or like, I don't know, being bullied as a kid, or having a parent who just was like really tough and hard on them. Like there's a lot of different levels of it. And when I bring it up to people who have issues with anxiety or panic attacks or just like anything they're working through, and I ask them about trauma, it's like there's this idea that it doesn't count if you weren't deployed and in battle, or you weren't like in an extreme situation, but like that's not the way it works. It's not the way our brain processes it. So what happens with trauma, if it's not resolved, is it takes the experience, and when we have this experience in a normal healthy processing of our brain, say it's something that like hurts your feelings or like makes you want to cry, in a normal process you would feel all the emotions behind it, you would process it, and it would get filtered away, it wouldn't come back up. What happens when we haven't processed those things is it kind of stays open in our brain as like a mark as unread text, or as a mark as unread email, but it doesn't leave the inbox. It's still there waiting for you to give it the energy and attention that it needs. But when you don't do it, it doesn't just go away. What'll happen is you start creating all these things that trigger you, and you don't necessarily know why. So here's an example of this. There's somebody that I know who is very, very like agoraphobic, claustrophobic, panic attacks, like all these things. They were not always like this. And in our conversations together, because I'm always curious about people and like what makes us all tick and makes us who we are, I was like, that's so interesting. And I do this with everything because, like, normally when somebody has something, chronic pain, things like this, extreme weight gain or weight loss, there's usually an event or some sort of emotional experience that it starts if you ask the right questions. And so with this person, I was like, that's so interesting that you never had this. And then boom, right around this age, you started having it and now you've had it your whole life. Like, what was going on around that age? And it turned out that this person had just gotten into a relationship that was highly abusive, was also going through a struggle with like money and low self-esteem and all this stuff. And that was when all these different panic attacks, emotional issues, emotional unavailability started to develop. And the way that you work through that, it's not that you relive the past, but you do have to process it. You do have to come to a full emotional closure around it. And then when you do, it's crazy because once those emotions have been released, your body doesn't get triggered anymore. I think I've talked about this book on this. I don't know if I have or not. There's a really great book though called The Body Keeps the Score. And it is all about how the emotional experiences that we do not process don't just go away. Our body just holds on to them in different areas. It's super fascinating. It's about just energy and emotions, trauma. It's a really great book if you've never read it and if you need to work through your own stuff. I'll even, if you don't know what it is, I'll link it in the description. But that's really what this is all about. So subconsciously, when we have things, and this isn't just for trauma, when we have things we haven't processed, subconsciously, it's going to trigger things consciously, even though we can't necessarily connect the dots. So why would somebody who's in an abusive relationship all of a sudden start to feel claustrophobic externally? It's because they feel stuck in their relationship. So anything externally that they feel stuck or trapped is going to trigger that anxiety. So it's interesting the way those things work. But all right, we're not going to go off on that topic. Going back to this, other psychological factors that can cause panic attacks and anxiety attacks, constant fear and worry. So remember, the way that our body responds is when it feels a state of fear and like it needs to survive, it creates these chemical responses in our body. So if you are always worrying and stressing and in a place of fear, all you're doing is signaling back to the brain those same responses. Don't worry, we'll get into the solutions to these. I just want to go through these first. Other thing too, psychologically that can cause this is low self-esteem and low confidence. It kind of just brings the whole energy system of the body down. I mean, I feel like that one's kind of self-explanatory. Another thing psychologically that can cause this is too much stimulation to the brain and not enough downtime for the central nervous system to reset. This is a huge problem with our society right now. So if you're always working, you're always on screens, you're always stressed, you're always on, it puts your brain in hyper alert and overload. And the brain, just like the body, needs time to rest, reset, and decompress. So if that's not happening, eventually the brain is going to be like, all right, it's enough. Like, things are hyperactive. You have brain fog. You can't concentrate. You're stressed. You can't think about anything. This is usually why there's too much stimulation. So these are the psychological things that can happen. So now, if none of those resonate with you, physiological factors that can cause anxiety and panic attacks, some of them might surprise you. So one, allergies. Allergies, because it puts the body in high alert, can mimic anxiety and panic attacks. And actually, interesting, prior to all of the anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications we have now, they used to treat anxiety with antihistamines because histamines create the stimulating neurotransmitters in the brain. That's what histamines do. That's why they are good for us to some level, is because that's what stimulates us. Antihistamines help downregulate those things. So they used to use antihistamines to help people with anxiety and panic attacks. So natural solutions you can do with this is start to eat either a low histamine diet, or you can take better care of your gut health and start balancing out the microbiome so that your body can regulate histamines a little bit better. There's a whole other thing on like probiotics, essential vitamins and minerals. I want to stay on topic with this though. So allergies are one of the things that can do it. Another one that can cause this, that's physiological, is nutrient deficiency. So like I was talking about earlier, is people who tend to be low in iron and B vitamins, especially vitamin B6, which you guys have heard me talk about before. Vitamin B6 is responsible for helping with serotonin and dopamine and GABA and regulating our neurotransmitters. And a lot of people are deficient in it, not understanding that our B vitamins are the first thing to get depleted when we're under high levels of stress. They also get depleted through sweat, exercise, things like that. So you always have to keep your B vitamins in check. And then magnesium, which ironically, all of these things can also cause hormonal imbalances. It can cause estrogen dominance in women, and then it can also end up causing low testosterone in men when you have nutrient deficiencies. So that's why normally, like, if you're not used to working with somebody from like a holistic perspective, anytime I talk to somebody and they have one thing going on that they're getting treated for, I usually will ask them, like, have you had functional blood work done? Have you had your nutrients tested to see if you have any nutrient deficiencies? Have you done things like fasted insulin, fasted glucose? Where's your cortisol at? Where's your DHEA? Like, you have to look at things as a whole, because you might be treating a symptom and not the actual problem. So even like with anxiety, let me just preface this with, there's nothing wrong if you need anti-anxiety and antidepressants. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do think, though, with that, it should be part of the overall holistic plan to figure out what's causing these things for you. And I think ultimately that's what most people want, is they don't want to just fix a symptom. They want to fix what's causing it and hopefully alleviate it as much as possible. So anytime you're working with anything, you want to do functional labs, check out those nutrients, the micronutrients, see what's going on, and see if you have some of, like, even with your glucose and insulin, if those are out of balance at all too. Another physiological factor is unstable blood sugar or under eating. I don't find too many men that are under eating. I feel like women are the ones that are probably worse at this, but it is definitely possible that men are under eating. Anytime you're under eating, it is going to put your body into a state of constant stress. Your body has to produce more cortisol in order to have the energy that it needs throughout the day. I always talk about this, so we're not going to talk about that here. Another physiological factor is alcohol and caffeine. Everybody knows caffeine because it is like an energy surge, but it's actually more than that. So alcohol and caffeine causes a stress response in your adrenals, and it throws off your blood sugar. That's usually, a lot of times, if people drink, the next morning they wake up and they feel a little bit shaky. It's usually your electrolytes are out of balance, your B vitamins have been depleted, and your blood sugar is out of balance too. So alcohol and caffeine, I've had people who would have alcohol and then the next morning they tell me they have anxiety. This is because it puts your body in a state of stress. I don't have a problem with alcohol. I don't think there's anything wrong with alcohol, but when you are consuming alcohol and caffeine regularly, it can throw off your body's stress results. Another physiological factor is hormonal imbalances. High estrogen can cause too much of those stimulating neurotransmitters that will cause anxiety and panic attacks, and more so high estrogen with not enough progesterone to balance it out. With men, low testosterone can cause anxiety and depression as well. So now you have kind of a pretty broad overview of the physiological and psychological things that can contribute to anxiety and panic attacks. And I'm hoping with this knowledge, you feel a little more empowered and not helpless of just like every time this happens, you're like, okay, great. Like, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm not going to be able to breathe. I feel like I'm going to pass out, throw up, and also like get put in the psych ward at any moment. Now you can actually be like, oh, this is what's happening. Has any of the things that she mentioned about psychological or physiological factors, do any of those apply to me? Now I can work on this. So some natural remedies. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with if you need anti-anxiety, antidepressant medications. This is all just a tool to give you more knowledge to help you make the best decision for your health. Some natural remedies. I already said this. Number one, mindfulness and meditation. If you don't understand the point of mindfulness and meditation from a spiritual standpoint, intuitive, energetic standpoint, at least understand it from a mental health standpoint, in that when you meditate and practice mindfulness, when you shut everything off, You sit in silence and you just focus on your breath. You are resetting the central nervous system, down regulating all those stress responses, and giving your body a chance to rebalance all your hormones, your adrenals, your blood sugar, everything. It also gives your brain a break so that it's not so stimulated. So even if you spend 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night, just breathing, sitting in silence, being in the present moment, that in itself is going to help you so much. So that's number one. Number two, positive self talk and reprogramming your mind. If you are constantly negative, constantly stressing, worrying, looking at the bad in everything, planning for the worst, all this stuff, all you are doing is telling your subconscious mind there's always things to run from, be afraid, fear, there's not enough, hide, survive, and your body is going to respond. So, reprogramming your mind to look for the good, positive self talk, things like that. If you don't believe in it, at least believe in it from the perspective of the chemical and scientific process that I explained to you to help bring your body into a state of relaxation, down regulate all the adrenaline and cortisol. And I mean, in the long run, you raise your own energetic state and you start attracting more good things. So it's got a lot of bonuses to it. Number three, one of the remedies you can do, exercise. Exercise, other than weight loss, helps with regulating stress. So, one of the reasons, a lot of people don't know this, one of the reasons I got into fitness back when I was 19, 12, I've always done fitness. I've been working out and going to gyms ever since I could drive. So like 16, I was the one before school getting up at like 4:30 a.m., going to the gym, then going to high school, then going to my practices and all this stuff. But the real reason I like got serious about it and got into fitness was because around 19 and 21, after being in an abusive relationship, it totally crushed my self-esteem. But also, I was struggling really bad with anxiety and panic attacks and needed a way to regulate it and balance it out. And once I started learning all about this stuff, I started exercising, strength training, and doing conditioning. And it has helped so much, obviously, not just with like health and well being and confidence, but it's one of the best ways to help with anxiety and depression. So I got into fitness for myself to pull myself out of a hard time. Then, after I started realizing how much I was like improving and I was having less anxiety and panic attacks, I felt better, all this stuff that I was having, I wanted to share that with other people, share and like it just became like this whole new path. Like then I got obsessed with holistic nutrition and obsessed with mindfulness and meditation and mindset and energy and spiritual work and all these things and like started sharing it with other people. So exercise, I am telling you this from experience, does so much for your mental health. That is the third way that you can help alleviate anxiety and reduce panic attacks. Number four, sleep. I mean, I know some of these sound really basic, but like when you put it all together, it really does make a difference. When you are short on sleep, your brain is in a state of stress. It just is. There's no way around that. Your blood sugar is out of balance, your hormones are off, and your brain is in a state of stress because it did not get the rest that it needs. So, you've heard me talk in the other episode about how to get better sleep. Listen to that episode and get better sleep. Number five, stabilize your blood sugar. How do you stabilize your blood sugar? You want to make sure you are eating balanced protein, fat, and carbs at every single meal. If you eat just carbs, it's going to throw your blood sugar way off and then it's going to come right back down. If you are just eating protein and fat, your body's not going to get enough carbohydrates and glycogen that it needs. So balance protein, carbs, and fats at every single meal. It'll help stabilize your blood sugar. All right, number six, herbs. There are some adaptogenic herbs that you can take that will help with anxiety and panic attacks. Number one, this depends on how it manifests for you. So some people, anxiety is exhausting. So it's physical fatigue that they feel. If this is you, there's an herb called rhodiola that it's a natural herb. They've used it in Chinese medicine for a long time. It helps regulate all the neurotransmitters, the glucose levels, so that your energy is sustained throughout the day. If you take rhodiola, you're going to want to take it in the first half of the day, not at night. Otherwise, it's going to keep you awake. So rhodiola is one of the herbs you can use. Another one you've heard me talk about is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha helps regulate cortisol, helps balance energies and stress response. Ashwagandha can be used at night. That's the biggest difference, is it can help you fall asleep at night. Third one is valerian root. Valerian root is great for going to sleep. I use valerian root intermittently. It pretty much just calms your brain down so that you can actually fall asleep. But it doesn't, at least for me personally, it doesn't leave you with that like groggy hangover the next day. So those are 3 herbs: rhodiola, ashwagandha, and valerian root. You can use that help a ton with anxiety and panic attacks. Number 7, vitamins and nutrients and supplements. So these aren't necessarily herbs, but they can help a lot. I already kind of talked about some of these. Taking a B complex every day, making sure it's in the active form, is going to be super important. That's going to help a ton with stress. The other one, iron. Iron is great. It's one of the nutrient deficiencies most people have that have anxiety and panic attacks. Magnesium. You guys hear me in every episode talking about magnesium. You got magnesium citrate and glycinate. Glycinate at night, citrate in the morning. L-theanine. So I take L-theanine at night with some magnesium glycinate and some valerian root. That's an amino acid that helps a lot with all those neurotransmitters and just calms the brain down. Another one, GABA. GABA is the calming sensor. It's the calming neurotransmitter. Most people are deficient in GABA if they are struggling with anxiety and panic attacks. So GABA you can take as well. Probably going to want to take it at night. Vitamin D. Vitamin D, a lot of people are deficient in, and it helps regulate our serotonin levels. So starting to take a vitamin D regularly, not only is it going to help boost serotonin and your happy hormones, but it's also going to help with your other hormones as well. Your omega-3s, last but not least, omega-3s help with inflammation in the brain and helps with neurotransmitters. Taking an omega-3 is going to do a ton of good for anxiety and panic attacks. All right. Number 8, hydration. Talked all about this in another episode. If you are even 2% dehydrated, your brain cannot function at its full capacity, and it is going to start stressing out and freaking out. Hydration's the other episode. I'm not going to go into all the things on that. Number 9, talk therapy. God, I feel like everybody should go to therapy. I've gone to therapy. All the people I love and respect have gone to therapy. Therapy is just like, I think it's one of the greatest acts of self-care you can do for yourself. Not entirely. I mean, I think exercise, meditation, nutrition, all those things are too. Therapy is just, you are going there to work through your for yourself and for all the other people that you love and care about in your life. So you can be a better friend, you can be a better partner, you can be a better business owner, an employee, and sister or brother or whatever, because you're not coming home every day dumping all the stuff you should be working through therapy on them. Talk therapy, especially if you do have stuff like PTSD and trauma or unresolved emotional things, just go to therapy. There's no shame around that. I don't know why like so many people have shame around that. Like, go to therapy, work through it, cry about it, talk about it, heal yourself until it doesn't bother you anymore. And then you're going to stop being triggered. You're going to stop walking around like a subconscious zombie, still making decisions based on past traumatic experiences. And I'm not saying that making fun of people. I'm saying that because I've done it too. So like, just go do the work on yourself, talk to somebody about things, and just talking to somebody alone, getting it off your chest is going to help you a whole lot. So number 9, talk therapy. Lastly, number 10, you just want to make sure your hormones are in balance. And you can do this with like a simple at-home hormone test to see where they're at. Like if you do have some estrogen, progesterone imbalances, maybe you have cortisol, testosterone. Just having an overview of what is going on with your health is going to give you the tools and the empowerment you need to balance these things out. So hopefully with this, you have a little more understanding of what happens the days that you feel like you're losing your mind, or you feel like you can't breathe, or you think you're going to die. And you can kind of do this little check like, all right, have I been managing my stress properly? Have I been eating and exercising and sleeping? Have I been doing mindfulness and meditation? Is there some stuff going on emotionally that I haven't really worked through? Maybe I just need some more vitamins and supplements. Maybe I need these herbs. Like, you have so many tools that you can work through. So take this knowledge and empower yourself next time this happens. But I mean, more importantly, it's just knowing that you're not alone in feeling this way. I think I can, every single person that I would say that I'm close to and I know has had anxiety or panic attack or like that feeling of like mental spiral. So, I mean, it's a very normal, common thing. Now you have some tools and resources to help you through it. If anything, just the self talk of like, it's okay. I know what's happening. I'm not losing my mind. I'm not going to die. My body, for some reason, thinks we're in a state of fear. So let me just retalk this back down and get to a state of well being. All right. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you have not already, be sure to subscribe as new episodes come out. I put the links to the book, The Body Keeps a Score, and some of the herbs and vitamins and supplements that I mentioned for you in the link below, specifically the brands that I like and have recommended to people. So if you need any of those things, feel free to check them out. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.